reached out to Stefan Verstappen, who is the founder of ChinaStrategies.com. He's an emergency preparedness expert, an author, and a martial artist. Stefan, welcome back. How are you?
I'm fine, Richard. How you doing?
Terrific. So this is, I think, week 4 since we started this series. We've talked about how to stockpile food, how to stockpile water, how to stockpile medicine. So today we're going to talk about communication, right? Radios.
Yes, because one of my worst nightmares is that the power goes out, the internet goes down, your cell phones don't work, and you're stuck there in the dark. And what happened? Are we under attack? Was it as you mentioned, a coronal mass injection that emitted an EMP pulse that took down the grid? Was it hackers? Was it a natural disaster? You won't know. How are you going to know? And in a survival situation, the more information you have, the better off you are to make the correct decisions to survive what's happening. I'll give you an example. Remember about 5 years ago, we had this huge downpour in Toronto, and it knocked the power out. Especially in my area, I was living in Etobicoke at the time, and it knocked the power out for 5 days. So I got on the radio and I listened to the AM, FM, talk radio. I couldn't find out anything at all. And what was the power just in my area? Was it all of Toronto? Was it all of Canada? How would you know? But I had a ham radio. And when I bought the ham radio, one of the things I did was I went on the internet and I Googled ham radio frequencies Toronto. And I got back like 10 pages, hundreds of radio frequencies. So I printed them all out and I went down the list of all the different frequencies. And there was everything on there. There was, Pearson Airport traffic control. There was Hyatt Regency security. There was local search and rescue. But what you need to look for is what's called the trunk lines. And that is those frequencies that are shared by police, ambulance, and fire department. So I tuned into that, and this is the frequency that the emergency services use to communicate and coordinate with each other. So within 10 minutes, I found out everything that was going on in Toronto. I knew that the Don Valley Parkway was flooded. I knew the GO train wasn't going anywhere. I knew that 401 westbound and eastbound was closed. And I knew that every ambulance and every fire truck in the city was occupied. This is, they're overwhelmed really quickly, and as well as the police, because the police were going around blocking off flooded roads. And so this is what happens during an emergency. Your emergency responders are overwhelmed within 10 minutes.
So the ham radio operators, they have a special license to operate a ham. It's like owning your own little mini radio station, right? There used to be a lot of sort of hobbyists who had a ham radio license so that they could, just broadcast whatever they wanted and they could be heard around the world. Is that still a thing, ham radio operators, aside from sort of the emergency ham radio operators?
Yes, it's still a thing. Now, let me explain that to you. For me, the ham radio is a source of information. If I were to broadcast, let's say I wanted to talk to you, Richard, and you got on your ham radio and we were just going to chit-chat and talk about the events of the day, you would need a ham radio license. However, in an emergency situation, anyone, whether they have a license or not, can broadcast a call for help. You just get on the radio and you say, Mayday, 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 and then you explain the situation and you call for help. But I don't foresee using that function very much. Well, first of all, I'm not going to be talking to people on the ham radio. We got phones now. Although there's an active hobby group, there's also a group of ham radio operators that come together during times of an emergency. And what they do is they help coordinate first responders' efforts during a disaster. And if you join up with them, they will teach you how to get your ham radio license. They're very good people. But so I'm not really going to talk to. I don't need it to talk. Two things I need it for. One is if there's an emergency, sure, yeah, I can get on there and I can call for help. Buildings on fire, we have injuries, we need an ambulance, whatever it could be, I can get on there and call for help, and I will not be breaking any laws. But even more important than that is you can tune in and you can get reports from other ham radio operators that will tell you what is really going on. Is the power blackout only Toronto, or is it Canada-wide? I can find that out by listening to the ham radio operators.
It would be a battery operated, obviously, because if the power goes out, you need the battery power. Stefan, we'll take a quick time out, come back, talk a little bit more about radios, and then we can talk about emergency power supplies. You good for that?
I'm good for that, yes.
Excellent. Stefan Verstappen, our emergency preparedness expert, the survivalist, founder of ChinaStrategies.com, and his online course is The Complete Guide to Building Communities. Back with more in a moment. Stay with us.
Conversation on the Richard Syrett Show. News Talk, Saga 960 AM.
The survivalist, Stefan Verstappen, emergency preparedness expert, and today we're talking about radios and the importance of having a ham radio. What can you expect to pay for a ham radio, by the way?
Actually, they're surprisingly cheap now. There's China manufactures one called a Baofeng, Baofeng, and what you want is a dual band, what they call a dual band, VHF and UHF, and they manufacture them. You can buy them on Amazon for like $60. It's not a lot of money. The thing is, they're kind of cheap plastic, so don't drop them. But if you handle them with kid gloves, they'll work fine. The other radio I would recommend everybody get is the regular standard emergency radio. They sell them at Canadian Tire and Walmart and things like that. It's got a hand crank that will generate power, so if the power goes out and if your batteries are dead, you can still crank that little crank up on the side of the radio, and you can tune into AM, FM, and shortwave radio. The only thing I ever got on shortwave radio, however, was a music station in Mexico, so the shortwave wasn't that handy. But at least, I tell people you need it for, moral support. You can turn on a radio station and listen to some music while you're sitting in the dark. But the ham radio is really the best to get information, but I would have both. The emergency radio, $25 to $45, not a lot of money. The Baofeng ham radio, about $60. You can pay a little bit more, but it's not necessary to pay more.
Can you get a hand crank ham radio?
I haven't seen one. However, we're going to go on to the next topic, and that is how to recharge the batteries for your radios. Now, I have a solar panel. I have a 12-volt solar panel. There's four panels. They fold out. I actually wired it together myself. I went to one of the electronic stores, and I got them for like $4 a piece. So I can roll that out, and 12 volts is more than enough to recharge your rechargeable batteries and to recharge the ham radio and the emergency radio. The other alternative is a hand crank. You can go, again, on Amazon. It's about $60, maybe a little bit more, but around $60. And again, it will produce 12 volts. And it's just a box with a crank on it and a handle. And you stick the box on your desk and you crank it with your arm. So it's not great, but it will recharge the batteries that you need for your radios and your flashlight and your laptop and your tablet, because you want to recharge your tablets and things like that. Later on, we'll talk about a survival library to put all your movies and information on a bunch of flash drives and have a tablet that you can recharge, and then you can watch movies during the blackout. But to recharge those batteries, you can use this hand crank. Now, it's not great, but the problem with the solar is we live in Canada. Look, the last 3 days I haven't seen the sun. So you're not going to be charging anything. But if you get on this crank and you start cranking it, and if there's more people in your family, maybe you can take turns cranking this thing when your arm gets sore. But at least it's guaranteed to charge your batteries. And the solar panels are not guaranteed to charge your batteries.
That's true. So let's say, for example, you had they used to call them chocolate bar, like batteries for your computer. Can you get a recharger for a chocolate bar battery that would hook up to one of these hand crank devices?
Yeah, you're going to have to do a little bit of wiring yourself, because on the hand crank, it's only got terminals like a car battery, black and red, and you unscrew them and you stick the wires in there. So it's good if you have a little bit of electrical experience that you can wire this into into a plug that would fit in there. I can do it because I have some experience with electronics, so it wouldn't be a problem for me. Go online and check if there are adapters that you can use to charge up your laptop and your tablet.
And rather than hand cranking it with your arm, which can be kind of tiresome, could you maybe jerry-rig that, some MacGyver it, as we used to say, so that maybe you could hook it up to like an exercise bike, or just so you could pedal maybe while you're sitting at your desk doing work?
Well, you can buy pedal generators. The thing is, they're a little bit more expensive. They're about like $160 and up. But that's another great idea. You can just sit down in the chair and you can pedal this thing, and that will produce electricity that you can charge your batteries with. So yes.
Any idea, like let's say you had to recharge 4 D-cell batteries for a couple of flashlights or something. How long would it take to recharge 4 D-cells? Any idea?
I don't really have an idea, Richard, because it depends on the voltage that you're using. Especially if you're using a hand crank, it's not going to be a regular voltage. Maybe even easy. I don't want to get into that, the 12-volt system. But yeah, no, probably the pedal generator is good. But another option is, remember when we were kids, we used to have these generators that you could put on your bicycle, and they would rub against the wheel, and they would power your headlight and your tail light. Do you remember those things?
Oh, yeah, they were great.
Yeah, they were great, right? Now, you can get those that will have a battery holder in it. And I recommend, now I do a lot of biking, so for me, to get one of those and with the battery holder, every time I bicycle to the store, I could be recharging my batteries. So that's another option.
Fantastic. All right. We should, at some point, we need to talk about the how to build a community. This online course that you're offering. You want to just kind of maybe tease it right now, and then maybe in the next week or so we can talk about it.
Yeah, sure, Richard. What I wanted to do was give your listeners what I thought were the most urgent prepping requirements right now, and that's why 3 weeks ago we talked about storing food, and look what's happened. Look what's going on now. Everybody's warning about food shortages, so that's why we went there first. But I have an online course called formingcommunities.com, and the thing is that with what's coming down, I don't have a lot of faith in our society maintaining its integrity for much longer. I really believe we're going towards a social collapse. And in order to survive that, yes, we need the food, we need the water, we need the medicine, we need the radios, but even more important, we need each other. We need to work together in communities. And Richard, you and I have talked about this before, about the homeschooling. I'm in touch with the homeschooling here in Ingersoll. These are the kind of communities you want to become a part of, so that I wouldn't send a kid to school these days. Look what they're teaching them. So you need to teach them yourself. So you need to be part of a community of homeschoolers. But where I live here, it's a lot of farmers, a lot of Amish, a lot of Mennonites, and they are a great community, and they provide food, because they're all the farmers. They grow all the stuff. So you need to get people together. And what I'm trying to do is teach people how to form mutual aid societies. This is what our great-great-grandparents belonged to way back in the 1880s. And this is what allowed them to survive and thrive by forming mutual aid societies. And I believe we need to do that again.
All right. When we maybe we'll pick up on that next week or the week after, but we'll be back next week with Stefan Verstappen, the emergency preparedness expert, ChinaStrategies.com, the website, and the website for the online course again is
formingcommunities.com.
All right. Great job, Stefan. We'll talk again next week.
Great. Thank you, Richard. Bye-bye.